Hello, today is August 7th. This is Paul Glumas talking to you with the LaRouche Political Action Committee and the LaRouche movement generally. And this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. We have come to the moment where we're going to have to crush the British system. What is happening is that the power in the British system is now moving to force, even though Donald Trump is president, to force a limited nuclear war. The cover of the Economist, which is the historically flagship publication of the British East India Company since the early 1800s, the London Economist, this issue has a mushroom cloud with the face of Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un superimposed on the mushroom cloud, saying it could happen. And the gist of the article is that it wouldn't affect Europe, or it would just be confined to Asia, and it wouldn't affect Europe or the United States. Well, probably would affect the United States, but it wouldn't affect Europe. Now, this is the British system saying it's time to push the reset button on humanity, because right now the Chinese are making memorandums of understanding in Africa with all the African nations on building the largest hydroelectric water project which distributes the water north from the Congo basin and provides the hydroelectric capacity in the water management, which is indispensable to the development of Africa. This is called the Trans-Aqua program, and it's our movement back in this long time ago, 20, 30 years ago, that actually put together this program. And there were a number of French companies that were involved. There were a number of different groups that were involved. And now, finally, it's coming to this is big. This is Africa, folks. This is how far this process of the One Belt, One Road, of the development, all these plans are now on the books. There's memorandums of understanding, there's construction getting ready to go, and the British system, the people, the power behind the British system, want to push the reset button. The other reason they want to push the reset button is that the secret is out of the bag about the banking system. Honig, former Federal Reserve official, I think his name is Paul Honig, he let the cat out of the bag. And this was published in Pam Martin's Wall Street on Parade. And that is that only 1% of the bankers' profits are going into the economy, real economy. 80% is going to buy back stock. The rest is being distributed as bonuses. These financial institutions are not serving a purpose for which they exist. They are merely funding their own debt, buying their own stock, and paying massive bonuses to their top echelon of officers. This is where they're at. And the secret is now coming out, that they're dead in the water. Meanwhile, um, China is going to be building $10 billion factories to produce electronics, I believe in Wisconsin. In other words, America's going to have jobs producing electronic equipment for a Chinese company which is building a $10 billion plant in the United States. I'm not exactly sure if it's Wisconsin or Michigan, but this came out today. So you have the massive process going on, and there will be an attempt to trigger the North Korea situation and a nuclear war. That's what you're up against. And these people in Congress who voted for the sanctions, they're actually supporting getting a nuclear war going with Russia. Do they know it? In a way they do. But why are they doing it? Why are the vast majority of the Democrats and Republicans doing this? A lot of them claim to be, peaceniks, hippies, love thy neighbor, tolerance, let's, a lot of them were the ones screaming about Bush and Iraq, but they didn't scream about Obama and the drones. Well, what happened to these people? Why are they for war with Russia? What has Russia done that is so terrifying that they need to go to war with Russia for? And they need to have all these sanctions on Russia, which are going to hurt Europe. But it's very interesting what's happening in the United States. So I'm going to go into this a little bit from another perspective. And I will go into why this is happening. And I'm going to go into what is the British system. Because I think a lot of people don't understand what the British system is. But in order to get into what the British system is, I have to tell you where I'm coming from, where the LaRouche movement is coming from, where others are coming from. Because you don't really understand the British system because you live in the British system. And you are infected with the British system. And much of what you think is actually from the British system. So if you don't know that, then it's hard for you to distinguish what is the British system and what is not the British system. And now I'm going to go through some of that with you. Okay, so on the question of what a human being is, we subscribe, and we is the category I gave you. Human beings are fundamentally distinct from all other living organisms. The concept of being human is intricately connected to the concept of having a moral consciousness at birth that distinguishes humans from the rest of known living forms. Thus, humans, beings, are intrinsically good. This moral consciousness stems from the nature of humans, both in having a power of will as well as powers of judgment. Both these powers are nurtured and developed in the intimate care of a social unit such as a family. This is best reflected in the principle of love, an innate love for one's family, one's offspring, one's tribe, one's clan, one's nation, as well as the love of truth, the love of knowledge, and the love of humanity in general. And this is intrinsic. Okay? You don't beat, it's not beaten into people. Okay? Now, in other words, the nature of humanity is not utilitarian. Only disturbed human beings are solely governed by avarice, mere instincts, greed, sensual lust, etc. Now, the British system rejects all of that and establishes that indeed all we are is what our instincts and greed and lusts, and that's who we are. That's the British system, right? They reject the idea that there is such a thing as this innate quality of humanity. And if you buy into their viewpoint, which is propagandized from Darwin to Huxley to Hollywood to you name it, if you buy into that, you are in the British system. You are thinking in terms of the British system. You know, what's the difference between a criminal and a president? Well, the president didn't get caught. You know, I mean, that's the British system. That's the mentality that you have. Okay, now, the British system also has a philosophical basis. One is David Hume utilitarianism, which the British East India Company promoted. And then there's the problem that Immanuel Kant created, which I described last week, where he says you cannot know the real world as it really is based on your innate categories that you're born with and your sense experience. And we subscribe to the proposition that human reason can know what is beyond innate categories and experience through a method developed by Plato called the higher hypothesis, and the hypothesis of the higher hypothesis. This method is available to humanity in general and is accessible though not easily, and can yield discoveries in art and science that change the cognitive powers of society in the case of art, and the physical relationships with the environment in the case of science. Without these discoveries outside the realm of what Kant calls phenomena, humanity could not have created civilization and increased its mastery of nature. The British system rejects all of this. On the issue of education, there have been increasingly disastrous education reforms that have been occurring since the 20th century. Our view is that the purpose of education is to educate and develop geniuses. The British view is to prevent geniuses from ever coming into being. Now, the nodal point of the decline of our educational system began in the early 20th century, best exemplified by John Dewey, who advocated eliminating ancient languages from the curriculum, since public education should be more for practical and pragmatic purposes, that is, only educating to meet the career and employment needs of society. From inspiring genius or near genius in the students, the educational system has since tumbled from the height of the great educational reforms in the 1800s by Wilhelm von Humboldt to the current educational system where young children are being told they must choose their sexual identity from a multitude of categories, and the brightest end up on Ritalin or other drugs because there is no cognitive content in too much of public education. Now, in our view, we seek to locate within religious confessions and generally in civilizational cultures those traditions, religious beliefs, and practices that are coherent with our viewpoint. We find these in the three Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, in the concept that God made man in his own image. We also find in the philosophical and civilizational practices of Confucianism the same kind of concepts. However, in the three Abrahamic religions, there are other contrary tendencies which depict humanity as intrinsically evil either through original sin or in other ways. And the British system promotes these contrary versions to drown out the concept of humanity created in the image of the Creator, which is what creates the good, which is what creates what's distinct in humans. So they try to drown that out, and at the same time drown us in religious wars over these sort of things. So today, in the British system, we have a hedonistic culture of appealing to the instincts of pleasure and the passions for material acquisition, along with a win-lose identity in economic and social competition, which is only negatively balanced by three cultural, religious, and philosophical movements. First, there's the growth of the evangelical belief in the end times and God's coming punishment of mankind for the sinful nature of mankind. Second, there is the green movement that opposes all economic development as a scourge on Mother Nature, where the mother will sometime soon erupt to wipe out or dramatically reduce the offending human race. And third is the explosive growth of nihilism in postmodernism, which now dominates our academic institutions, and where there is no truth, there is no meaning to anything. That is the British system. We are in the British system. Now, our view is different. We take the best examples of science in Kepler, Einstein, and Vernadsky. In our modern world, the discoveries made by these three are yet to be fully appreciated, especially in the scientific method employed. We find these current cosmological theories that the British system promotes today of a universe on entropy or heat death and the Big Bang to be at odds with the everywhere increasing complexity in the organization of the universe. The British system seeks to impose this incomprehensibility, where the cosmological theories governing what is considered to be the laws of the universe, entropy and heat death, are completely at odds with the observable reality. When the human species is able to master nuclear power in its fullest, the human species introduces an entirely new degree of complexity in the universe. In this, we see in the mastery of nuclear energy, for instance, we see it as a part of the ongoing evolution of the universe, not as something that's going against the universe, not as something that's going against the fixed nature of the universe. The ability of the universe to change in a more complex manner, in this case with the assistance of human beings, is more indicative of the nature of the universe than some projection of heat death. In other words, our nature, created in the image of the Creator, is far more indicative of the way the universe really is than this idea of heat death. In science, breakthroughs in science and their application and the increasing conquest of space and beyond, as an example, is not only the basis for the improvement of the material circumstances of life, but also the basis for demonstrating our human nature to ourselves. The British want to wipe all that out. The British system wants to wipe all that out. No, that's evil. That's evil. In art, we oppose the view that the perception of beauty is arbitrary. Beauty is not in the eyes of the beholder. All human beings have the capacity to discern beauty from non-beauty. Whether in music, poetry, or the visual arts, creating beauty or art has the same quality as the discovery of new scientific principles. What is being discovered in art through metaphor is the nature of the human mind, which is discovering itself through art and sharing those discoveries with others. This is the essence of classical music from Bach to Brahms. The British system rejects this and did everything possible to make sure that that classical tradition did not continue past Brahms. The British system rejects a universal, knowable principle of beauty. That's the British system. That's the British system which is seeking to stop us. Why? Why are they seeking to stop us? Because Lyndon LaRouche and his wife Helga Zeff LaRouche are the remnants of the best of the European Renaissance. And that best of the European Renaissance, which is what the British fear, is now being commingled with the emergence of another Renaissance centered in ancient Chinese culture, the Confucian Renaissance, the Chinese civilizational Renaissance. And that is what is occurring in the One Belt, One Road. We're looking at the beginning of a Renaissance where the downtrodden populations of the world are going to not rise up and rebel, but are going to become developed. And that is the beginning of a Renaissance, because it's going to be guided by the best of those two traditions, which are now commingling themselves. And that is why nuclear war has to occur from the standpoint of the British system. That is why the reset button has to be pushed. That is why a global financial collapse needs to be vectored to wipe out the structures of society that can reorganize, to prevent the reorganization of society in the context of a financial collapse. That's the battle that's going on. So why did these congressmen all vote for the British system? Because they are the British system. They are part of the British system. They, in one way or another, they subscribe to aspects of the British system. You know, take someone like Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's a big champion of Glass-Steagall, right? Oh, she loves us. You know, we're great. The LaRouche movement is great. They're champions of Glass-Steagall with me too. But she's not serious. Does she know that if you implement Glass-Steagall, you wipe out the entire imperial system once and for all? Quadrillions of dollars of worthless financial interests go up in smoke, and with them all of the financial people that are involved. And then governments can sort out the pieces. Does she know that? Does she have any idea when she mentions the word Glass-Steagall, she's declaring war on the British system, on the British Empire? No. She doesn't. But so she's silly. A lot of these people are just silly. They're not serious. They don't understand, because they have essentially assimilated beliefs that are from the British system. They are in the British system mentally. Now it's very interesting. The two senators who voted against the sanctions, who were they? Rand Paul, Bernie Sanders. Why did they vote against the sanctions and everyone else didn't? Why? Because they are the only ones that have an actual real constituency. It's not the media. It's not the financial crowd. The progressives and the libertarians. And while there are problems with both of them, at the base, these people are not agreeable to the system that they're living under. And therefore, had Bernie and Rand Paul not voted for the sanctions, they would have lost faith with their followers. So that tells you something. That the vast majority of the people, and I'm not just talking about the people that are associated with Bernie, are totally against the system. And this is why Trump was elected. So now we're heading into a collision course between Trump and the British system. And it's only going to get worse. And it's going to be a fight. And we are the ones determined to crush the British system. And we hope that in the process of all of this, those people around Trump will wise up and realize that that's the way to go, too.